Howdy folks. Wanted to talk today about the tool that I use to get through meltdowns. Real quick, want to talk about the difference between meltdowns, tantrums, and burnout. Last one first. Burnout is when you have been pushing too hard for too long and your body says, we're going to take a break. Usually lasts days, weeks, months. Meltdowns are shorter time periods, minutes, hours, days. A tantrum is bad behavior to get something you want. Think of a toddler pounding their fists on the floor because they want a piece of candy. A meltdown can often appear the same as a tantrum. The difference is, in a tantrum, if you give that toddler a piece of candy, they'll stop their bad behavior. With a meltdown, you can give the person what they want, or they say they want, or it appears that they want, and the bad behavior doesn't stop. Meltdowns just have to run their course quite often. But my wife and I have found that there are some things we can do to make the process less painful. And after getting used to using the tool, it also makes the meltdowns shorter. Now I'm talking about my meltdowns here, and I think of my meltdowns in relation to my autism. I don't know that you have to say this tool is only for autistic meltdowns. I think it might work for any kind of meltdown, bad behavior-ish kind of thing. I'm not claiming that it's a universal tool, but I think it could be adapted to your situation. This meltdown tool was developed for my wife and I, and it uses information about what our love languages are. Maybe you're familiar with the 5 love language concept. So let me run through the steps, and then I'll go back and explain them a little bit. Step 1 is to recognize that it's a meltdown. Step 2 is to name the meltdown. Step 3 is I get to say what needs to come out from the meltdown. Step 4 is my wife comforts me in my love language. And then step 5 is we move forward in my wife's love language. And then the last step is to check in that everything got resolved. All right, step 1, recognizing the meltdown. Either I or my wife can identify it. For me, that usually means when I'm feeling overwhelmed or frustrated, that's a key indicator that I'm having a meltdown or about to have a meltdown or entering into a meltdown. For my wife, the indicators that I'm having a meltdown are she's feeling hurt by what I'm saying or doing, by my behavior, or she finds herself reacting to me getting testy. Step 2, naming the meltdown. We say many variations on the phrase, I'm having a meltdown. Are you having a meltdown? Is this a meltdown? We make sure to use the word meltdown to name the problem specifically. A lot of times in practice, what will happen is I will say, I'm feeling overwhelmed by whatever. Then my wife will ask, are you having a meltdown? And that seems to work well for us. Step 3, I get to speak about the meltdown. That involves me speaking honestly about my feelings and frustrations, and it often involves strong or hurtful language. And that's maybe not an ideal situation to be a jerk, but it's a lot better than denying those feelings, emotions, and phrases and trying to just behave, because a meltdown is gonna have its say. And in this step, my wife simply listens to what I'm saying, tries to understand, and accepts what I say without judgment and without taking any negative wording onto herself. That's a lot of work. You can think of this like bleeding the pus out of an infected wound or relieving the pressure on a pressure cooker. And then once all the bad is out, we move on to step 4, where Alicia speaks in my love language. My love language is touch, and we go slow because the meltdown is not a fun experience. So she first puts a hand on me, and then if everything's okay and I'm done getting everything out from the meltdown, she might rub my shoulders or scratch my back or offer other support in my love language of touch. And what happens for me during that step is co-regulation. My emotions simmer down, and I'm able to see the world more clearly. So the meltdown ends. And then step 5, Alicia gets to speak in her love language. Now, her love language is acts of service. That may mean that She gets to fix things involved in my meltdown, things that cause me to be overwhelmed. That may mean she just gets to go on with the rest of the evening, the things that got interrupted by pausing to deal with my meltdown, to use this tool. And my part in that is I wait and I accept what she decides to do to speak in her love language. And that's an important detail in our relationship, because I don't like her to save me from the world. I like to have a chance to improve my mental health through experience and building resilience. But in this instance, it keeps things balanced. It allows us both to have a say and have our way in handling the meltdown. And sometimes in this step, I'm able to do something, an act of service for her, that helps with everything that got interrupted by having to pause and use the meltdown tool. Step 6 is to check back in to make sure things are resolved. We don't have a set time that this has to occur. You easily could say 20 minutes or an hour later. We come back together to make sure the meltdown hasn't restarted, that it actually is resolved and over. I hope I explained that well enough. Did that make sense? The tool itself is fairly easy to use, provided you can get to step 1, which is recognizing the meltdown. That's, I think, obviously the biggest hurdle. We've been using this tool for a couple of months, had probably 40 or 50 times to practice with it. We like what it does for our relationship and for our family. I wanted to share it with you all today in the hopes you might be able to use the same concept to make your life and relationships better. Again, you don't have to do it exactly like us. I think the concept of recognizing the meltdown, naming the meltdown, and working through whatever the meltdown is about is a good basic plan. So do you have other inputs for dealing with meltdowns? Do you have your own meltdown tool? Let me know down in the comments. Folks, I hope that you're doing well. Do take care. Remember, hope is a choice.